All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we are going to be getting into the attack on Britain, uh, the new goal of Hitler after he does what he does with Britain, and also what happens on and why the United States joins World War II. We're going to talk about that today. Okay. So, here is your warm up picture. Now, these are three propaganda posters, one from the Germans, one from the British, and one from the Americans. Okay, here, let me move my video up there for a little bit. So the first one, as you can see, is a worker basically handing grenades to a German soldier. The middle one says, "We beat them before," which you see up on top, the light gray person, German. That was from World War One. And the bottom one, which is you can see the swastika next to his helmet, it says we'll beat them again. So we beat them before, we'll beat them again. And then the American one, it says Americans will always fight for liberty. Liberty meaning freedom. So you see those American Revolution guys, and it says 1778. And then the American soldiers on the guys in brown, 1943. So the warm up question is basically asking you, of those three propaganda posters, which one do you think really got people like, yeah, maybe I should join the fight, join the war, or help out in the war? Which one do you think was the most effective? Okay. Which one do you think really made people say, you know what, I'm going to do something? I'm going to either go to work and make things at a factory for the soldiers, or I should join the army, Marines, whatever, you know. So of these three, the German, the British in the middle, or the Americans, or you could use like one, two, three. Okay. Which one do you feel was the most effective and why? Don't forget the why. Okay. So if you just put number one, you're not going to get your points. Okay. You need to explain why do you think that one was more effective than the other two. Okay. So think about it. Pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, before we begin, I want you to look at that map where my little camera thing is, and all that area in blue and in light blue. Okay, that's all controlled by the Nazis. As you can see, it's basically all of Europe. They have total control over everywhere. Now, some students mentioned and you noticed, why are some areas white? The white areas, those white countries, those are countries that are neutral. They're basically telling the allies and the Axis, you know, hey, we're not joining either side. Now, if you attack us, we'll join the other side. But we don't want that, so don't do it. Okay, so they're, not taking either side. Now, if you look in the where it says United Kingdom, so where all that blue is, you'll see a little pinkish, reddish area that says United Kingdom. That's Britain. Okay, now Hitler wants to take over that. So the thing is, like we said in the last lesson, they tried to invade that area, but it didn't work. So instead, he's like, you know what? Let's just bomb the hell out of it. So they send planes over to drop bombs. Um, Luckily, the British had their own air force, the Royal Air Force, which is the RAF, and these guys are intercepting the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and they're shooting them down. They're fighting it out, some of that. The thing is, the Germans are getting defeated. They're losing. You know, yes, they do drop bombs on Britain, but the Royal Air Force is actually beating the British Air Force, so they stopped the invasion from happening. Okay, here's the problem though: Britain's almost out of resources. Remember, they're an island. And they can't grow a ton of food. They can't dig up a bunch of coal or find a bunch of or make a bunch of steel. So they're running out of stuff. So the Prime Minister of Britain, Winston Churchill, basically asks and gets resources and aid from the United States. Now remember, the United States is neutral at this time. They're not taking either side. But they come to an agreement saying, okay, we'll let you borrow some of this stuff. Oh yeah, you can borrow this and you'll give us money as a little payment for it. You know, this is the Lend Lease Act. And yes, America is not in the war, but we're really actually truly helping Britain, you know. So in 1941, countries like Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, they see the writing on the wall. And again, if you look at all that blue, that's the Nazi controlled area. So they basically tell Germany, hey, Germany, look at, we want to join your side of this war. The reason they do this mainly because they're scared that the Nazis aren't just roll over them and take over their country. So instead of that, they're like, hey, we'll join you. Just don't take over our country. Okay. Now, at the same time, Germany is overrunning Yugoslavia and Greece. Now, since he couldn't take over Britain, Hitler now focuses on another country, Russia, the USSR. Now, if you remember from a couple lessons ago, Hitler and Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, they basically were like, "Hey, we see eye to eye. You don't attack me, I won't attack you." Remember that? And I even asked you guys on the exit ticket question, who do you think, if either one of them, who do you think would break the agreement first? And a lot of you guys said Hitler, and you were right. Hitler does break the non-aggression pact, and he starts invading Russia. Now it's at this time Hitler's like looking around, going, "You know what? I control all this area. I am the man." And this is where he lets out his primary goal of wiping out the Jewish people in Europe, and this is known as a final solution. Okay, so all the areas in blue, all the Jewish people in those areas were rounded up, sent on trains towards Berlin and stuff like that. Um, and in 3 years, he kills about 4 million Jewish people. Now, the plan to um, take over Russia uh, goes into effect on June 22nd, 1941. It's known as Operation Barbarossa. Okay, that was the plan, the name of the plan to take over Russia. Now, here's the thing: Russia is a huge country, huge, and at that time, they had a ton. I mean, a ton of tanks and planes. Which they had more than the Germans. But the problem is, they had quantity, not quality. So yeah, they had a ton of tanks, but they were old. They weren't built that well, you know. Whereas the Germans didn't have that many tanks, but man, were they good. They were. I mean, they could take a shot and they'd still keep on going. Whereas the Russian tanks, a good caliber sized bullet could probably rip through the inside the tank and start bouncing around and killing people. You know. So yeah, and it's because of that the Germans were able to push the Russians back a good 200 miles into their own territory. Now it's at this time that Hitler and his generals start arguing because Hitler's like, well, this is all because of me. We control all this because of me. And his generals were like, no, we're the ones who came up with the plans to attack who, when, how, and stuff like that. Yeah, you're in charge of the whole, you created all this, but the actual planning and attacking of these places using the Blitzkrieg attack, that's us. So they're arguing delayed the Russian invasion until October. But eventually the generals gave in to Hitler because they knew if we step up to him, we talk back to him, we tell him, no, your plan's stupid. He can easily kill us and our families and some of that. Okay? Now, um, in the southern part of Asia, Japan invades Indochina. Indochina is controlled by France. Now, basically, what happens is like this: Japan tells the government of France, hey, can we invade your territory, Indochina? Now, remember, the French government is controlled by the Nazis. The Nazis control France completely. So basically the Nazis told the government to tell Japan, yeah, it's okay, go ahead and invade that place, enjoy it, take whatever you want. Anybody with two brain cells knew, yeah, France isn't really saying that. The Nazis are making France say that. And two countries that really didn't like this move was the United States and Britain, because Japan is taking over little islands here and there all over. And the US and the British had troops stationed nearby. So they didn't like this idea that Japan's just doing what they want out in the Pacific. So what they did is they put an embargo on their goods. So just like how Britain gets the coal and steel and some of that, Japan's the same way. They're an island. They can't make a lot of their stuff. They have to get it from other places. And the United States sends a lot of stuff to Japan, specifically oil. Oil's a big one. Now, because they put that embargo, Japan was like, well, where's all our stuff? Yeah, the United States and Britain put an embargo on our stuff, so we're not getting as many things. So Japan, instead of saying, hey, United States, what's going on? Instead of talking to them, they decide to attack an island called Malaya. Malaya is important to the United States because that's where the United States gets their tin, rubber, rice. So in retaliation of that, the United States cut off Japan's oil completely. And Japan was getting 70% of their oil from the United States. So when that happened, Japan's like, whoa, 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 America, easy, bruh. Calm down. Let's talk. Let's talk about this, okay? So peace talk between the United States and Japan start, okay? But on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, everything changes. Okay. Uh, at 6 a.m. on the southwest area of uh, Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, a U.S. ship spots a submarine periscope. You know, the periscope are those little mirror things that the submarines look around above to see above the water, like what's around there. So some Americans see the periscope from a distance. They're like, "What is that? What is that?" So when the periscope sees them looking at them, they duck down back in the water. Okay. Now the Americans don't know. Oh my God, that's Japanese, because we're in peace talks with them, and Japan is miles, hundreds of miles away. So they're like, they wouldn't be here. So what was that? So some people think it was like a whale tail, or something like that. Yeah, they just don't know. But the last thing they thought was a Japanese submarine periscope. So at 7:30 that same morning, the United States gets a message from Japan saying peace talks are over. We're going to go to war with you. So America's like, oh wow, that was kind of out of nowhere. And at 7:55 in the morning, the attack on Pearl Harbor begins. Okay. Now, the Japanese have their commanding officer, I'm going to probably kill his name, Mitsuwa Fuchida, and he's given orders. Number one thing, radio silence. No talking on the radios for anybody. Okay. The other thing was they were supposed to fly really low, low as they can go. because there's a new invention that was just released within a year of the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was called radar, and they found out pretty quick. If you fly really low, you go under the radar and it won't pick you up. Now, I had some students in the past tell me, well, if they were flying really low, and yes, there were people who saw them really low and they could see the red dot on their planes because again, the red dot represents the sun, and that's what Japanese symbol is on their flag. The red dot means the sun rising. That's why they call Japan the land of the rising sun. So going back, why didn't the American people who were on Pearl Harbor, why did they freak out? Why did they go, oh my God, look at planes and, Japanese planes? Because the thing is, they were expecting planes, but American planes to be coming in. And it caught them totally by surprise. So Fashida, as they're flying low, right, and they realize, okay, no one's shooting at us. There's no other planes in the skies attacking us. And then he gives the order. Tora, 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 which means tiger, tiger, tiger. And this is where all hell is unleashed. The Japanese sent two waves of planes. In total, there was 353 planes that flew over Pearl Harbor, and only 29 of them got shot down. And these guys are dropping torpedo bombs and some of that down. They're shooting at planes on the runway, planes that are just set up. People, who are trying to swim away from the sinking ship, they're getting shot at by these planes. The United States loses about 100 boats, including three of the really big battleships: the USS Oklahoma, the USS Utah, and the USS Arizona. The attack lasted for about 2 hours, and 2,404 people, military and civilians, lost their lives. Now, up until September 11th, this was the biggest terrorist attack our country ever had on American soil. Okay, but that changed when September 11th happened. Now, here's the thing: some people, especially Americans, think that was it, that the Japanese just bombed Pearl Harbor. No, they attacked two other places at the exact same time. I'm sorry, three other places at the same time as Pearl Harbor: Guam, Midway, and Wake Island. Then the next day, they attacked a couple other places: Hong Kong, the Philippines, and Singapore. Now, if you look at the map above, um, you'll see where all those lines are coming from. That's Japan. To go from Japan to the far, far, far right one, which is Hawaii, um, it's not just 25 minutes, because you see when the peace talks ends and when the attack begins, it's 25 minutes difference. It takes days to go from Japan to Hawaii on boat, especially back then. So this whole attack was premeditated. It was planned by Japan, and the way they attacked Pearl Harbor, Guam, Midway, and Wake Island at the exact same time, that's coordination. That's they thought about this. Okay. Now all these places we talked about, besides Pearl Harbor, all the other places, they were taken over by Japan in about less than a month. So the United States, now they're in the war after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And one senator person had an idea about, why don't we get Native Americans as like code talkers? And people were like, yeah. Roosevelt like, that's a great idea. So they had the Native American code talkers. 420 Native Americans signed up, and they saw a lot of fighting in the Pacific. Okay? Now, about a month later or so, actually more like a couple weeks later, President FDR on February 19th, 1942, issues Executive Order 9066. And this is basically the rounding up of Japanese Americans. They're basically forced to move out of their homes and be moved to these camps spread out throughout our country. And they had to sell all their stuff, their belongings, their businesses, their homes, all that stuff. Um, Now, you guys won't we won't get too much into this in this class, but you guys will learn more about it when you get into U.S. history. Okay. Now, one of the things you have to know about the United States, is this: we get slapped in the face, we retaliate. We always do. And on April 18th, the United States retaliated against um, Japan. So remember, they bombed Pearl Harbor. So the United States then gets whatever ship they can that can float. They put planes on there and they send them out towards Japan. Now, their orders are to blow up certain places in Japan. Okay. Now, they go as far as they think they can go, as in the planes start taking off. Right? They bomb Tokyo, Kobe, Yokohama, Nagoya. The thing is, though, um, some soldiers, some of the planes, they couldn't make it back to the battleships. So some of them knew, okay, we're gonna have to crash in the ocean. But a lot of these guys were like, well, we can also go crash in China. And that's what some of them do. They fly into China, and as soon as the gas is basically done, they try to glide in there and try to, you know, um, try to survive. Not to go straight nose dive into the ground. But when they evacuate, the plane, they're met by underground Chinese soldiers. Now, if you remember, the Chinese are going to war with Japanese. Okay. So they see our American pilots and they're like, hey, are you Japanese? Are you Japanese? And our guys are like, no, no, we're not Japanese. No, we just bombed them. We destroyed Tokyo. We destroyed Kobe. And they're like, wait, you guys don't like Japan? We're like, yeah, we hate Japan. You guys hate Japan? They're like, yeah, we hate Japan. Like, okay, good. We're on the same side. And it goes to the old proverb: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Chinese hate Japan. We hate Japan. So therefore, China and America are friends. So a lot of these underground Chinese soldiers help out our American soldiers to escape. Because remember, when the planes went down, the Japanese are out there looking for them, and so the underground Japanese soldiers help them out and escape. Now, April 9th, Japanese soldiers capture a city called Bataan in the Philippines, and they end up capturing 78,000 American and Philippine soldiers. And when they captured them, they basically tied their hands together and stuff like that, and they made them march towards this prison camp. The prison camp was like 65 miles away. Now, some guys were beaten along the way. Some guys were just straight up executed, shot and killed. Uh, you know, there was sometimes some soldiers would try to fight, the Japanese soldiers, and then the Japanese soldier wouldn't kill the guy who attacked them. They would kill the person in front of them and behind them, and basically tell them these guys are dead because of you. You know, their their death is because of you. So you want to keep that up? Fine, do it. But just know we're going to kill more people because you did this. We're not going to kill you. So once they get to the camp, though, thousands of men will die from malnourishment, disease, exhaustion, abuse. And again, like I said, some are just executed just because. Now, on May 6th, the Philippines are completely under the control of the Japanese. And the US the next day is like, we need to get a foothold. We need to get an area where we can call our headquarters. And they get that at the Battle of Coral Sea. Now, on June 4th through the 7th, the U.S. cryptographers, these guys who basically hear messages and try to break the codes and some of that, they broke a Japanese code and they found out of something very interesting. Basically, it was a plan by Japan. And their plan was quite simple because remember, Hawaii is still recovering. A lot of battleships are lost, they're sunk, they're gone. Some ships are damaged, but they're able to repair them, but it's going to take some time. And some ships are just being built brand new. So what happened is this: Japan has a plan to go back to Hawaii. They were going to capture the territory of Hawaii because remember, at this time, Hawaii is not a state; it's a territory. And they're like, "We'll capture the island. We'll hold it hostage. We'll tell the Americans get out of the war, or we're going to take over this area and this is ours now." You know, but if you get out of the war, we'll give it back to you. So the Americans are like, okay, so they're going to head towards Hawaii. Okay, find out where they're going, the path they're taking, the coordinates, and we'll have some soldiers and planes and battleships ready for them. Now, again, like I said, the United States doesn't have many planes and ships and stuff like that, but they have one thing that the Japanese don't. That's the element of surprise, just like they did with us on Pearl Harbor. So the Japanese are going. They're heading towards Midway to go towards Hawaii. And as they're coming through, they just see the American battleships and planes in the air. They are totally caught off guard. And so the Battle of Midway, Japanese lose 3,500 men, four carriers like those, like that ship you see right there, um, a cruiser, and 332 planes. The U.S. loses 307 men, a carrier, a destroyer, and about 150 planes. But they win the battle. And again, Japan had no idea that the Americans broke the code. So when they were going to Hawaii, they thought, okay, no one knows about this. And here's a fun, interesting fact: this is the first battle in the ocean using boats and some of that. That this is the first battle that Japan has lost in 350 years. So yeah, it was a long time. All right. So once you got this down, once you've heard this part of the lecture, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this. So with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?